Hello and welcome to this series of tutorials on geometric beadwork. My name is Erin Peña and I've been beading for about 20 years. In 2025, I was awarded a grant by the Minnesota State Arts Board to make this series of video tutorials covering the basics of the kind of geometric beading I do. I have a separate video covering the tools and materials I use, but briefly, these beads are by the brand Miyuki. They're called Delica beads. They're cylinder beads, size 11. And the thread I am using is called Fireline, and it is the 4-pound test variety. Please excuse me while I remove a cat. Okay. We've talked already about making triangles and hexagons, and today we're going to talk about pentagons, my favorite shape to bead. Oh yeah, I love these guys. They come out perfectly flat pretty much no matter how big or small you make them, but they do have a slightly more complicated increase cycle. There's going to be a separate video covering increase cycles, but for now, when I say increase cycle, what I mean is the number and frequency of beads added to our working shape. We work these beads in a spiral, starting in the middle and working our way out. And adding more beads to the spiral increases the total area of the shape. And adding less decreases that total area. So every one of these basic shapes has a regular increase cycle, a regular pattern of added beads that we use to get this flat shape or close enough to flat. With the triangle, we added 3 new beads every single row, or 1 bead per corner every single row. With the hexagon, we did 6 new beads, 1 per corner, every 3rd row. And with the pentagon, we're going to be adding 10 new beads, or 2 per corner, every 4th row. So first up, grab 2 colors of beads. As in the last 2 videos, I'm using a separate I'm using a separate color for the corners, just so that you can more easily see that increase cycle pattern, just to make it more visually distinct. Now, we talked about this in the hexagon video a little bit, but with most of these shapes, when we start beading, we don't launch immediately into the regular increase cycle. We have a few foundational rows in the very beginning that set us up for beginning the cycle. With the square, we basically just had our loop of 3 at the very beginning and then went straight into it. With the hexagon, we did 3 rows in the beginning. That was just 1 bead at a time, basically, and we did that to give us enough room to be able to start placing 2 beads. And that's what we need to do with the pentagon as well. We need to set up a couple beads, a couple rows of just a few beads in the beginning in order to give us that space to work. So, first things first, we will call this color A, color B, color C, we'll only use that at the very last. Color B is our corner color, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick up 5 of them. 2, 3, 4, 5. Scooch them down to the end of our working thread. You should only have a couple feet of thread anymore and it'll just be too tough, and we're only making a very small shape. Okay, and then tie a square knot here. and you can see how your knot is in between two beads. Decide whether you want to work clockwise or counterclockwise. It doesn't make a difference. I work clockwise. So sew through the bead next to the knot in the direction you want to work, and give it a little tug so the knot is inside the bead. Yeah, like so. It's a little weird, it's not a circle yet, that's fine. Okay. Now, next row, we're going to add one A bead in between each of these B beads. So, pick up one A, and then sew through the next B bead in the ring, the one right after the one that your thread is coming out of. Like so. Do it again. 1A, sew through that next B bead. Okay, I'm going to do that twice more. Pick up 1A, sew through the next B bead in the ring. 1A, next B bead in the ring. Okay, and this is our fifth one, our fifth A, our last A for this row. And so what we're going to do is we're going to finish the row by sewing through this B bead, and then we're going to step up to the next row. We're going to begin that spiral by coming out of this A. We're going to sew through this A bead as well. So we sew to step up, we sew through the last bead in the row that we're beading off of, and then through the first bead of the row we're finishing. Okay, so 2 beads. Okay, now for this next row, we are going to place 2 B beads in between each one of these A beads. So pick up 2 B beads and sew through this A. Skip over that B that's right below it. Just sew only through the A's. And again, 2B through that next A. Two B's through the next A. Okay, and this is our last one of this row, so we're going to step up. We're going to sew through this A here, and we're also going to sew through the first of these 2B so that our thread is coming out in between those. So through those 2 beads, like so. And our thread is coming out in between the 2 B's. Okay, now this next row with pentagons can get a little tight. I find that if I'm going to break beads, this is where it's going to happen. So take your time, go slow, go careful. Sometimes a way to mitigate that is when you do your initial loop to tie it with a little more space in there, not like tight, but just with a little bit more wiggle room, and that can help sometimes if you're having trouble with it. So first, pick up 1 B, and we're coming out of this first B here. We're going to sew through the second B so that this B we're placing snugs right in between them, like that. And the next thing we can see is that we have a space right here where another bead can fit. And that's going to be an A bead. We pick up an A bead and we sew through only the first of these two B. And that A will just snap right into place. Okay, pick up one B, sew through this second B here. Pick up one A, sew through this first B, pick up another B, go through the second B, A, through this first B, B, through this second B, A, B, okay, and this A is our last bead of the row. So we're going to sew through both of these beads here to step up so that we're coming out of this corner here. And this can be a tricky part because things get very tight, but oh, there we go, got it. Okay. All right, now you can see we're starting to get a pattern of beads that are poking up and beads that are poking down. With peyote stitch, every row that you work is worked by sewing through the previous row. So every row only sews through pretty much the row that you just finished working. So if you find yourself like accidentally sewing through two beads, or like if your tension isn't tight enough and it gets a little bunched up and you can't tell which ones are up or down, that's when, you know, you can miscount. You can start adding extra beads and then the shape will get asymmetric. And you can do that on purpose. But if you're aiming for symmetry, the tighter you keep your tension, the more defined these up beads will be, and the easier it'll be to spot them to sew through them. Okay. Now this next row, we're going to just add A beads all around. No new beads in the corner. And we're going to add 2 per side, so 10 A beads total, just like that. Just sewing through the A, and then sewing through this B in the corner. Ah, jumping shapes. As an FYI, I'm trying something a little different with my light and camera setup today, so if it's worse than before, let me know and I'll go back to the way it was. I was feeling like there was a bit more shadow, so I'm trying to keep the shadow off of the working, at least. Okay. Last bead in the row, so we're going to sew through our corner bead here, and then out through this next bead. You don't have to do them both at once, you can do one at a time. You know, as long as you're not getting your thread looped or tangled. Okay, and that is the foundation for a pentagon. It's a little more involved than the hexagon. You know, it's several rows as opposed to just 3. But now we can begin our regular increase cycle for a pentagon, which is 3 beads in the corner, then 2, then 1, then none. So it's a 3, 2, 1, none cycle. And using that cycle adds 2 beads per side per cycle. So 10 beads total per every 4th row. All right, we're coming out on a side here, not a corner, so we're just going to put down an A, sew through, okay, and here's our corner space. So pick up 3 B beads and sew through this A. Okay, now you see how they're sort of forming a little, like sort of a little curve. What you want to do is you want to mess with these beads with your needle or your fingernails, or both, so that that middle bead there is sitting down in between those 2 on the side, so it's more of a flat line. This won't always be possible. You know, micro differences in the beads can lead to different spaces in the corners where it doesn't work, but the more you can make it this shape, the more regular it's going to be. So aim for that. It won't always be possible, but aim for it. Okay, and now we're on the side, so 1A. Okay, 3B. And skipping over that B because that's a row below and we don't want to go through the rows below. Okay, through the A, and just mess with it a little bit until we can get that bead sitting down. Sometimes it takes a little. Aha, just like that. Okay, 1A. 3B again. And mess with it so it's sitting a nice flat line. Okay, 1A, 3B, 1A. Okay, this is our last placement for this row. So 3B, and we're going to go through these 2 beads. We're stepping up. Okay. And then we're going to mess with this guy a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Now, these beads that we placed in the middle here of the 3, we are not going to sew through those again. Those are basically there just to hold space, to push out the other 2 enough to add enough area to keep the shape flat, but we're not going to work through them again. So we're going to place an A here, and we're going to come out of just this first B. And we're in the corner, and we're on the 2 of the 3, 2, 1, none cycle. So we're going to pick up 2B, we're going to skip over that middle one, and we're going to go straight through the 3rd one here. And it'll sit like that. Okay. 2 more A's, one at a time. Guess I should specify that. Okay, and we came out of just that first B, pick up 2B, skip over the middle one, and go straight through the 3rd one. Yeah, like that. You can probably tell that I'm using my fingers, you know, decently often to help the beads sit where they need to. They don't always snap directly into place. Sometimes they need a little encouragement. See? Just push it over. All right, last bead of the row, 1A. Gonna sew through both of these to finish, to step up. Okay, and now we're on the 1 of the 3-2-1 none cycle. So we came out on a side, so first 1A right here. And once again, we're going through just the first of these 2 B beads in the corridor. So we're coming out in between them. And same thing, we're going to pick up 1 B, go through the second B in the corner, and just snug it in there, just like that. Okay. And now we have 1, 2, 3 A's down the side. So we'll do those. And then come out of just the first of those 2 B's, pick up 1 B, and go through the second. I mentioned this previously, but it's more natural for me to hold the beadwork like really close to my face, quite nearsighted. So I know it keeps creeping down towards the bottom of the video screen. Sorry about that. I'm trying to keep an eye on it. Okay, 1 B in the corner. One in the corner, 3 A's along the side. Coming out of just that first B, pick up 1 B, go through the second B. And this is the last bead of the row, so go through 2 beads, finish, step up. And that's quite tight, so I'm going to do 1 at a time. Okay, and now we're on the last row of the increase cycle, which you pretty much only need to do if you're going to be making it larger or attaching it to another shape. Like if I just wanted this pentagon as itself, I would finish it on the 1 of the 3-2-1 none cycle for that nice point. I like the way it looks. But we are going to do 1 more increase cycle just for practice. Normally, well, before I had done more than 1, but it's quite a long increase cycle for the pentagon, so we're just going to do 1 more. So on the none, pick up 1A, and we're just going to use this corner like any other bead, and we're just going to go straight around. 4 beads per side. When you count how many beads are on a side, you also have to count the corner. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 again. But if you're on a none of the cycle, there aren't any beads in the corner, so it's a little easier to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Just as a heads up for the aforementioned math of this art form. Again, mostly just basic arithmetic and a lot of trawling Wikipedia looking at weird geometric shapes. Okay, last in the row, so 2 beads. Finish. Step up. Okay, and we're coming out right over a corner, usefully. Okay, so we'll do one more cycle. And very quickly to illustrate, I said it the pentagons increase by 10 beads per cycle or 2 beads per side. So we counted 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 1 cycle larger and it's got 6 per side. So that's what I mean when I talk about how many beads it increases by. Okay, 3B, go right through that A there. Okay, and again, mess with it a little bit, see if you can get it down there. It's often less easy on this second increase cycle, but you know, still give it a shot. Okay, do some A's down the side. Okay, 3B again. Through this A here. Okay. Mess with it a bit. There we go. If it's easier for you to keep track of, you could potentially use a third color for that middle bead to signify that you're not going to sew through it again. I thought about doing that for this tutorial, but I don't know, I thought it might be more confusing. But it might be easier. I don't know, it's just a thought. I listen to a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of blank space in beading. It becomes a little more challenging once you start reading patterns. I'll have some videos covering that later as well, but it's better to have like the basic steps down first before we start getting fancy with colors. Okay, and this is our last bead in the row, so we're going to sew through this one to finish, and then we're going to sew through just the first of these three. Getting caught along the edge of my bead mat here. Okay, through one and through just that one. Okay. All right, and now we're on the 2, so grab 2B, skip over that middle one. We're not going to sew through it again, just through the last one there, the third one. Yep, okay. And again, just through that first one, skip over through the third one with 2B. Don't let that happen. And this is the last bead in the row, so we're going to sew through that first B of the 3B, just the first one, and then just the first B of the 2B as well. So that one and that one. Theoretically that one. Okay. That one. And don't let your thread get looped. Seriously, don't let your thread get looped. Okay. All right. Okay, and now we're on the 1 of the 3-2-1 none cycle. So, 1, remember we're just coming out of just the first one, pick up 1B, sew through the second B, and snug it right in there. Okay, now it's A's all along the side. Should have 5 A's per side at this point, which you will recognize plus the one in the corner means we have 6 beads per side now. Out through just that first one, pick up 1 bee, sew back down through the second one. Hexagons and triangles both increase by 1 bead per side per increased cycle. But with the triangle, that cycle is every row, and with the hexagon is every 3rd row. But having it increase by only 1 bead, makes the math a lot easier. Like, it's easier to do a hexagon with 4 beads or 5 beads along a side. Oops, forgetting where I'm at. We're in the corner. 1B. Anyways, easier to do a hexagon with 4 or 5 beads along a side, but with the pentagon, it's either 4 beads or 6 beads along a side. You can't do 5 beads along a side with the standard increase cycle. You would have to mess around with it some, which is possible, but it does increase a slight, it does add a slight curve to the shape when you start messing with it. Yeah. Oh, geez. See, this is what happens when I try to talk and bead at the same time. Not used to it. Okay. A. Okay, now the B goes right in there. Fortunately, we're almost done here, so don't have to worry about my wandering brain for too much longer. One in the corner. Jumping shapes. Sometimes you need to change the angle of your needle a little bit if your working is really stiff, like pentagons often are, and you just need to approach it from a slightly different angle in order to go where you want to go. Okay, last bead of the row. We're going to go through this, the first of the 2 B beads, and up through this guy, this one in the corner. Okay, now if I just wanted the pentagon, I would finish it here on the 1 of the cycle, but I like to, when I'm going to be attaching a piece to another piece, I like to end on a none row, because you can use that row to zip pieces together more easily. So we'll add that last none row just for the practice. And we are going to have a proper video on zipping pieces together like that, on making 3-dimensional shapes once we have our basics all down. Okay, so I'm just going to use a different color just because it's our last row. It's a theoretical zip row, just to make it easier to see. You can just use all A's again if you want to, and that's totally fine. But anyways, 6 C beads per side. Don't let that happen. Sometimes thread will get stuck or twisted and it just needs an extra little yank. Like if you feel like your bead isn't sitting properly, it's worth taking a look because it might be twisted thread that'll come undone at later rows and just make your weave all wobbly. And a lot of this is based on the way it feels, not necessarily on the way it looks, so that's important too. Okay, last bead in the row. We'll go through our corner here, and we don't technically need to step up because we're not going to do another row, but if we were going to step up, we'd be going through the next bead, this green one. Oh, and it's time to tie it off. Some people like to tie knots. I prefer to just weave in my ends, so what I'll do is I'll go down a couple beads, this one, and then I'll come back up a couple beads. So, down this one, and it's going to be pretty tight because it's a pentagon, so be careful. Down through this one. Okay, and then we go up this way, so go through this green C bead next door, go up, pull it tight so your thread gets buried between the beads, go through this one, and then through that one, not that one. It's okay to turn the shape over if you need to look at what you're doing. It's often easier to like pass the needle like this rather than trying to keep it on the same side. Okay, so we just made sort of a figure 8 with our thread down there and up there. Okay, and we've got our tail thread here. The tail thread is next to a knot, so we don't need to do too much with it. Just, I'm just gonna sew it through one bead, this one next door, just so that we're not trimming it off directly next to the knot for a little added security. Okay, and you can use your scissors or your thread zapper. And there you have it. Pentagon. Oh, all right. Well, thank you for joining me. Next time we'll either be talking about increased cycles more generally, like more of a theory-based episode, or we'll cover the square. It'll be one or the other. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.